the message. The message says this: under pressure, we really reveal who we are. It's not until we're bumped that what's inside of us comes out. It's not until you hit your finger with a hammer when you're trying to drive that 3-inch nail, when that word comes out that comes from the core of you. It's either going to be, bless the Lord, oh my soul, or it's going to be 3 F words in a row. You see, it's in there, and it's going to come out, but it takes pressure to really reveal it. It's not the type of thing that happens in church, but it's the type of thing that happens when your thumb is just aching because you've just beat the crap out of it. You see, here's what tests do. They reveal. Here's 3 things tests do. They tell us the truth, they produce endurance, and they assure us of rewards. The first thing a test does is this: it tells us the truth. A lot of us assume that we're a lot further on with our faith life than we really are. A lot of us assume that we're far more healthy in our faith life than we really are. We overestimate our spiritual maturity, but when it all comes down to it, when that test happens, that's when we come face to face, not with who we think we are, but who we really are. When God puts us to that precipice and that ledge, and He instructs us, jump. The mind of an adult says, wait a minute, are you insane? Like, normal people don't do this. But the heart of a child says, if my daddy's there, He's going to catch me. It's going to be all right. The Father heart of God knows what it takes to help us grow in our spiritual walk. And in the midst of these tests, God is not revealing something He doesn't know already. But God is allowing us to know ourselves better, to see how we react when we are under pressure. James says that when our faith is tested, our endurance will begin to grow. As Christians, we should come to the point, at least at some point in our maturity, when we understand that testing is good because it produces endurance. The testing that the Bible talks about is when a pure substance goes through the fire and it is refined, and all of a sudden the impurities are melted away and that substance becomes more pure and more precious. Tests are uncomfortable, just like the flames of a furnace, but they are beneficial because it shows how genuine our faith is. And when our faith is tested and we're on the other side, we look back and we say, God, I thank you for that opportunity. Endurance makes us more like Jesus. It's the transformative power. When we learn to stick and when we learn to commit and when we learn not to move to the left and move to the right, but to stay where we are because we believe that God is producing something good in our life. Every time we endure a trial and a temptation, it increases our strength. It increases our endurance. The trials manifest the nature of Jesus within us. I would like to tell you there's a shortcut. I would like to give you 3 easy steps to avoiding tests and trials. If there's ever such a sermon, the person's lying. There's no shortcuts. Sometimes things that are good for us suck. Medicine is usually good for us. I've had Buckley's. Tastes like duttiness. Exercise is very good for us. But I hate running on that treadmill. Often the things that are good for us are the things we avoid because they don't give us pleasure. James tells us there's no easy way to maturity. The only way that we can become fully mature and full grown in our faith is when we learn to submit to the process. When we learn to pass the tests. You see, the tests have rewards, guys. The tests have rewards because it builds our character. The tests have rewards because it makes us more like Jesus. But the tests also produce a crown in heaven. James 5:11, behold, we count those blessed who endure. You have heard of the endurance of Job and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealing with him. That the Lord was full of compassion and He was merciful. Job didn't enjoy what he went through. In the midst of it, he thought that everything was going out of control. In the midst of it, he begged God. In the midst of it, he says, God, stop this. But James says, listen, when it was all said and done, God's mercy and God's grace overtook the life of Job, and he was rewarded for what he went through. James 1:12 says, blessed are those who patiently endure testings and temptations. Afterwards they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. God is interested in seeing his children win. He doesn't want to see us lose. He's interested in seeing his children victorious. God's heart is to reward his children on that day, to see us crowned in glory and splendor, because he knows that one day we'll have the opportunity to take our crowns and cast it at the feet of Christ. And those who have no crowns will have nothing at that point to offer. There can be no victory without endurance. If we don't bear the cross, we'll never wear the crown. If we want to be victorious, we need to endure. I know that sounds good. I know it makes good theology. But perhaps we have a problem. When I talked about India and what it meant for those pastors, what it meant for those Indian Christians to endure till the end, it meant beatings. It meant rejection. It meant persecution. It meant that many of them would lose their lives. But for those who endured to the end, they would be saved. But for us, there's a disconnect. We have to ask ourselves, what does it really mean to be tested in Canada? Over in the last few weeks, I've been talking about enduring trials, temptations, learning to see things God way. But here's what we need to understand. In Canada, our faith is tested. In Canada, we go through trials and tribulations, but it's tested in a far different way. I said something that I hope you guys thought about, but I really believe it's true. Because when we looked up on the screen and we saw people being beat to death, I'm sure we all felt sorry for the person getting hit. But I said, you know what? If we're really honest, it might be a little easier to live out Christianity in India, where somebody beats you for your faith. It might be a little easier to live out Christianity as a missionary in northern Brazil, where you can be imprisoned. Because the trials and the temptations and the tests, they're obvious, they're black and white. And you know what it is to reject Jesus. And you know what it is to stand firm. And you see, when we have black and white situations, it makes life a little easier to live. But in Canada, what are our tests and what are our temptations? Nobody's trying to beat us and nobody's trying to put us in jail. So what does this really mean? It's easy to turn that off and say, okay, well, if I was in India, all of this would mean something to me. But in Canada, I really don't know how we're being tested. I really don't know what our trials are. Our trials and our testing is real. They're just different. They're much different. In fact, they're so different, it's often hard to recognize them. I said something that might seem insane, but I really think it's true. I think it's harder to live out Christianity in Canada. I think it's more difficult. And why would I say this without being dramatic? It's just this. Because we're so rich. We're flipping stinking rich. We've come here for that. I think on some degree we're all immigrants in this country. Some of us have just got off the boat and some of us have been here for like 400 or 500, 600 years. But unless you're a Native American, you're an immigrant. And you came here looking for something. You were looking for a better way of life. You were looking to improve yourself. At the turn of the century, some people just came to North America to work. All they wanted was a job. They couldn't get jobs where they left. The pleasure of working was something that they desired in their life. They wanted to lift the sack for 8 hours a day because where they lived, in Russia and in Europe, they couldn't even get a job. Today, Western culture, the heart of what it is built on this: wealth, power, and prestige. If you really want to be honest about Western culture, I challenge you, turn on a hip-hop video. Watch it for 10 minutes. I think a hip-hop video is probably the most honest representation of what Western culture glorifies. Jesus one day is preaching